Hello and welcome to the Methodical Methodist Podcast, a podcast where we talk about why the church is still relevant for us today as we explore themes connected to religion, politics, pop culture, faith, and yes, even the church. Together we can find out what it means to live into the mission of the church by making disciples. Now, let's get methodical. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 5 of the Methodical Methodist Podcast. I am your host, the Reverend Andrew Lay, and I'm excited to have my very good friend Jared Duke on the podcast with me today to talk about football, faith, and psychology. We had a really great conversation. We ended up actually talking for about an hour after we ended the interview. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. At the end of the podcast, Jared is going to share a meditation that he has recorded for a project in his class that I hope that you might enjoy and be able to get some use out of it. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Jared Duke. So Jared, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, so we have known each other for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah, probably. Well, I think we talked about it one time, us being potentially in daycare together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, since high school for sure.
Yeah, we kind of became fast friends in high school. And I was in your wedding, and you're going to be in mine here pretty soon. And
That's
so
right.
I'm really glad that we've been able to kind of maintain our friendship
sure.
over the years.
Yeah. I talked to my parents about that once before. We were talking about keeping friends and stuff, and I think the invention of group chats has really kind of changed everything when it comes to that. And we can kind of keep in touch. I mean, there's our group chat. We pretty much talk every day. Something or other. So.
I mean, the fact that you're in Connecticut right now and I'm in Athens, Tennessee is pretty crazy.
That's for sure.
But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was your career playing college football. So you went to the University of Mississippi, otherwise known as Ole Miss, and you played Division I football there. And so I thought that maybe you could just tell me a little bit about how that came about, how you ended up being recruited by them, and kind of what that whole process was like.
Yeah. Well, I grew up, wanting to play football, being right down the street from the University of Tennessee, and always wanted to grow up, and I kind of just wanted to be Reggie White growing up. He's a Chattanooga area guy. You might know his name. But yeah, he kind of became a big deal, and I basically worshipped him for a long time, and wanted to follow in his footsteps, played all kinds of sports, and then obviously narrowed it down. I think genetics helped me narrow it down quite a bit. So I always had that goal, and I always thought maybe it'll pay for things one day down the road. NFL was never a huge goal of mine. I really just wanted to play at the SEC level, and that's what I grew up watching. And so my sophomore year of high school, I hit a growth spurt, started having serious conversations about having a career and making a thing of it. And just started going after it, and working really hard. And I'm sure you remember a lot of the summers that I couldn't hang out, and very preoccupied with the sport for sure.
Absolutely.
And
when you say growth spurt, like, what do you mean by that? Because I think some folks would want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I was always one of the bigger kids, like in middle school and elementary school, so I was always a little bit taller, but I was never the tallest, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then in ninth grade, I guess it was the summer after my ninth grade, right before sophomore season, I just grew like crazy. I don't know. I didn't measure it really. I don't really know the actual measurement of it, but I my legs hurt at night. That was a big thing. So,
oh man, really?
The growth spurts were awful. Yeah.
Gosh.
For your listeners, I'm 6'7", and the growth spurts were terrible. Agonizing at night, and then I just grew and started realizing, I might have a skill set and a body that could take me to the college level and help me fulfill that dream.
Yeah, because I think a lot of folks are talented, but they don't have the size, to really be able to pull that off.
Yeah,
but you had the size. I mean, you were able to really to go that next level.
Yeah, you can't teach size, that's for sure. And then I just worked really hard, kind of sunk everything into that plan. Spent a lot of time in the weight room, spent a lot of time, running bleachers and waking up early and all that, and that whole thing. I wish I knew where some of that drive to exercise was now, but I mean, it was a lot of work for sure, and I'm working with athletes now that are kind of realizing those dreams and trying to kind of help them figure that out. And sometimes it's a hard conversation. Hey, you might not make it, and what's going to separate you? Obviously, there's a lot of gifts that you have to have, but what's going to separate you is your work and what you end up doing when no one's watching. And that's a conversation I have a lot because it's something I'm proud of, I guess, and it's something I it's exciting to achieve something and then like actually have a goal and go after it. That's a really exciting process at the end. Helping right now, trying to help other people kind of see that and achieve it. And really, I'm a bearer of bad news sometimes, but
you got to be sometimes. But
yeah.
So kind of how did you get on the radar for Ole Miss?
Yeah, well, that's mostly I can credit my parents with that because we didn't know anything really. We didn't know anything about going to college and what that process looked like. And then second to that is how do you get recruited? And really, all we did was go to camps in the summer, and that was the biggest thing. Was I'd be I think the summer before my senior year, I think they went to 11 different camps in a like a 10-week span. And,
wow.
That was just all over the country. It was just going to places like Auburn and Ole Miss and Louisville, those kind of places, and trying to
just getting some exposure.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing. That's the only way to do it, honestly, unless you're, unless you're Reggie White, unless you're just a blue chipper right out of high school that is well known.
Yeah. So you played right guard on the offensive line.
Yeah, in high school I played tackle. I played right tackle mostly, and then in college I wanted to play tackle. But unfortunately, it seemed like our tackle spots were always filled up with stars. We had coming in. We had Bradley Sal and Bobby Massey. Both of them are still in the league today. They're still doing quite well for themselves.
And
then my next opportunity, I looked up and a guy named Laramie Tunzel was in there, and he was just an unstoppable force. Really unfair to see someone that young be that good. And then
don't you just hate that?
Yeah, and then realize, that's my spot as well. That he's going to be taken.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you ended up playing quite a bit, though.
Yeah.
Didn't you start your freshman year?
Yeah, I had a kind of a weird go at it when it came to my college career. I worked, worked really hard. Didn't really go in with the expectation of being able to even play or not redshirt. I thought I'd go in and redshirt, and a lot of that is just right place, right time, and putting yourself in a position to actually take an opportunity. So worked really hard, lost a lot of weight that first summer, got down to where I needed to be, and just kind of grinded. And due to, I guess, some unforeseen circumstances, the guy in front of me was asked to leave the team, and then I found myself playing, and then I found myself starting that freshman year, and still, that was an intimidating process for sure.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. And then what's weird is I ended up not going. I ended up playing every game after that into the end of my career there. But the next 2 years didn't start a game. I played special teams, different stuff like that, and then I didn't start another game until my senior season, where I forget how many games, maybe 11 games or so I started that season.
Yeah. Well, what were some of those the highlights that you experienced while you were playing football there at Ole Miss?
Yeah, man, that whole time was a blur for sure. I I can't. there were plenty of good highlights and stuff I'll remember forever, and they were certainly just as many, if not double, low lights of that 4-year span. Because we didn't. I think we won 2 games my sophomore year and everything. So really, I guess the biggest highlight is the turnaround that I got to be a part of down there. My sophomore year, we lost 2 games. Coach Freeze comes in, a ton of momentum. We were kind of tired of losing. We were tired of being a laughing stock, and turned around. I think we won maybe 7 games that my junior year, which was really just a special season in the way of momentum and getting folks on board again. And then obviously that turned into something much larger. My senior year turned into 8 wins, and then obviously when I left is when they started beating Bama and those kind of teams.
Yeah.
So
right.
So being a part of that it's the biggest highlight for sure. Just being able to say, hey, got to be a part of something. It was kind of big. Now, according to NCAA, I've only won one of those games because they have vacated our wins there. So.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I know. What a crazy thing. Well, even being there and playing on that field, knowing who's been there and who, you played number 74 on your jersey, and you were able to meet people like Michael Orr from the Blind Side movie.
Yeah.
You shared a number with them. You met Eli Manning. And what were those experiences like?
They were surreal, man. I mean, right before I got down there, the Blind Side kind of erupted. I guess it was our senior year of high school, and then went down there. Michael Orr became a kind of a household name, and a really popular player. And then I show up and they give you a number. You don't necessarily get to choose those numbers unless you got 4 or 5 stars by your name when you come in.
Right.
And then I got Michael Orr's number, which was really a shock and kind of I don't know. It was a nice moment. It's like, oh wow, this is definitely a noticeable number, and kind of means a lot to get that kind of number. And it was nice because there were, and I think you have one of them, but in one of the local shops there was a rack of number 74 T-shirts, and I went in there. I was like, well, those are clearly for me. The
That's right.
True freshman
Jared
that
Duke.
hasn't played it down. Those are clearly mine. So my family and you got a ton of those. So cleared the racks out for sure.
That's right. That's
so yeah,
right.
that was a special number for sure. And then getting to meet him and I think I found out that I would be starting. I found out that I would be starting before the Auburn game. I'd played a little bit before then, and then I find out I'm going to start. And that was the week that they became the number 1 ranked team in the league, and it was Cam Newton, and they had a ton of momentum going behind them. And then there was this guy by the name of Nick Fairley that was, becoming well known for not being the cleanest of players, but definitely being an effective player. And and he and I find out, I'm going to play him. And this always I always tell people this. It sounds like I made it up. I promise I didn't make this up. But I find out on Monday that I'm starting. Watch a little film on them and stuff, and I'm fully, obviously really intimidated by the whole thing. And I get in my car, and I've got a sports radio on, like a regional sports radio, and they they end up talking about Nick Fairley. They're talking about Cam Newton, and they start talking about Nick Fairley's performance. I think he performed against Georgia. That's kind of what made him the headline of a nasty player or whatnot. And the announcer actually said, I'm not kidding. He said, if I ever find out I have to line up against Nick Fairley, I'd quit the sport. And
wow, you're kidding me.
Yeah, and that sounds fake. I know it, but that is wow. I was like, this feels like a movie here. So you're like, I'm that guy. I have to play against him. So I turned that off because it wasn't helping my mental state at the time for sure. But yeah, so wow, that was an interesting story. So I finished that game up. Did fairly well, I guess. There we go. There's a pun, but he actually meets me after the game and tells me I did a good job and stuff, and that meant a lot and stuff. And then I walk out and there's Michael Orr, and my mom had always wanted the picture of us, and she's like, "Oh, the 74s, y'all get together, let's take a picture." So I got a picture of me and Michael Orr, and he
awesome.
He talked to me and he said, "Hey, you started tonight, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know that, right?" That's crazy. And he said, "Yeah, you started." He goes, "You started against Nick Fairley tonight." And I was like, "Yeah, that was wild." He goes, "Yeah, that was kind of like my career." And I was like, "Really?" He goes, "My first start was against Glenn Dorsey, which is wow, kind of a." When I kind of idolized him in high school too. He was a LSU guy. Idolized him. But it was a cool moment. It was a really neat moment for him to acknowledge that and be like, "Hey, I struggled too and stuff." And obviously really nice to receive that kind of support.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. Wow, how about that? So you talk about kind of playing against a tough player. Was he the toughest player that you kind of went up against?
I'd like to say so. He was taking it pretty easy. I think he knew he had a true freshman in his first start against him, so he was taking it pretty easy in that game. And then there's a few moments in the game where he really turned it on, and I could tell, I couldn't stop this guy if I wanted to.
Yeah, so, different level. Wow.
Yeah. Anytime in the first series of the game is always when everyone's at their highest and kind of everyone's kind of revving to go and really fired up. And yeah, that first series did not go well for me. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think he ran right through me at one point, and I said, "Man, this is going to be a really long game," and pressured the quarterback. So, but yeah, it was a rough one for sure.
Yeah. Well, just being at that stadium and kind of being there during game day. I've only been there one time, and went your senior year, and it kind of experienced the Grove and that whole atmosphere firsthand. But maybe you can explain some about what that culture was like, and kind of seeing that as a football player, or even just living in Oxford, a very college kind of town. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, you knew me in high school. I was a pretty kind of sheltered kid, and Oxford is what did they used to say? A drinking town with a football problem, and so that's not something I came in and adopted at all. So fitting in wasn't always great. I mean, the Grove. The Grove obviously centers around the drink, and so it wasn't something that me or my family. And another thing, I was so homesick during that time. I
know you were.
I missed home greatly. I missed the mountains. I missed just family and everything. And
Fazoli's. I remember there were no Fazoli's there.
Oh man, that tormented me. And there's no Fazoli's here either. So
oh man,
I don't know why.
You got to stop moving to places that don't have Fazoli's.
I really do. That's my goal in life, is to live by Fazoli's. So I missed my family, and they made a point to come down to every game, and so I was hard pressed to spend any time in the Grove, like after a game or anything, and not be with my family, and obviously before games, I didn't really get to experience it at all, except for the walk.
Of course.
So we did do a walk through the Grove, and obviously you remember that, and there's that never got old, even in the worst season possible. That one of the worst SEC seasons in history. The Grove still never got old. Now that experience, just walking through fans and just absolute chaos, just really intense. You got drunk frat bros kind of trying to give you the biggest high five of their life, and hurting your hand and stuff. And then we got Rebel Alley down there. There's a corner that you have to walk by, and a bunch of old dudes who are also drunk, and they're kind of trying to tackle you and get you revved up for a game.
Oh my gosh.
It was wild. It was really special. Really fun to be a part of that experience. But also there was a good helping of anxiety that went along that, because the fans are fans, and you're there's only so much an offensive lineman can do to mess up the game, but there is a few places that you can mess up the game royally.
Yeah. Sure.
Especially in special teams, and sometimes it didn't always help to walk through the Grove and realize, I can kind of really run these people's nights. So there was always a fresh helping of anxiety for you in those moments.
Wow, yeah, I didn't think about it that way.
Oh yeah,
of how it kind of added some pressure and some faces for you to look at, kind of going into those games. Wow.
Yeah, and surprisingly, the 50-year-old man who's been drinking for 10 hours and has his bald head painted isn't always the most elegant person after you've lost a game, and isn't always the kindest person you can face after a game.
Sure.
So
man,
there's obviously overall good experiences, and then there's some not so good ones for sure, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, though, those experiences.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, which is Ole Miss still your favorite team?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess it's a really good transition into, this chapter of life and everything. They are, and almost every day I listen to Ole Miss podcasts and stuff. That's kind of a part of my daily regimen, and they're still very much a part of who I am, and that being said, there was a big staff change recently, and I think one coach in one person, and then that entire staff is a face that I recognize. So it was a face that was from my time there. So really cleaned house recently. So not a lot of familiar faces. A lot of faces there right now that turned me down and turned my initial dream of going to Tennessee down. So so it's a little mixed feeling. I'm supporting. I'm totally supportive of Coach Kiffin there. I think he's definitely talk about a story arc. I think he's definitely changed a lot of who he was and who he is now, and I'm really excited to see the product he puts on the field. So obviously there's always going to be a fan in me, but right now I'm studying and hoping to end up back on a sideline somewhere. So I know there's a moment where I'm going to have to maybe trade some colors here and try to, possibly. And, those are
sure.
So Ole Miss, I learned from Coach Luke, actually. Coach Luke, who just got fired at Ole Miss as head coach. He was my offensive line coach while I was there. I came in this summer, and I'm currently at Springfield College, and we wear maroon at Springfield College, and I was wearing my maroon Springfield College shirt, and I looked at Coach, and I was like, oh, I know I'm wearing the wrong colors in this building, and he's like, no, absolutely not. Don't worry about that at all. Like, you're doing your thing, and that's kind of the attitude you have to have, especially if you, from the point you get there, it is business. Ultimately, what it comes down to is business, and that's a reminder every day. Every day you're there. So there's certainly a lot of components to Ole Miss that I'll always, Oxford's a special place, and Oxford's home. So and I brought my wife down there, and she also was just like, this is special. We'd love to end up back in Oxford at some point. But, But wherever the adventure takes me, I'm definitely willing, especially if they have a paycheck along with it. I'm definitely willing to trade colors and go somewhere else. But part of it, Coach Luke is now on staff at Georgia, and he's not wearing the red and blue anymore. And there's definitely a business component, and that's something you got to consider for sure.
Well, that also kind of leads me to my next question. You've mentioned some of the coaches that you've dealt with. So if you could play for any SEC coach, or actually just any coach, who would it be?
Who would I want to play for?
Who would you want to play for?
Well, it's funny. I had when I moved to New York, and took a job there, my now friends, but the coworkers there, they looked me up, and they looked up my Twitter and everything, and there's a story still about me, blasting, quote unquote, blasting Les Miles, blasting Les Miles on Twitter, and they always joke, oh, you hate Les Miles. I think Les Miles would be high on that list for me. I think I definitely want to play for a guy like him. Someone just kind of fun and innovative, I think, and just just you can tell he's probably a really good individual. So he's high on the list. Also, for head coaches, Tom Allen comes to mind. He's Indiana's coach right now. I played. He coached at Ole Miss while I was there. He's coaching the linebackers, I believe. Really, just a stand-up guy, kind of just a great coach, really talented too. He's taken Indiana to new heights, but a stand-up guy, someone on and off the field that you can respect and really kind of, work really hard for it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Good deal. So now that you're out of college, you're no longer playing football, you have started pursuing a career in psychology. So what led you to this new path? What kind of inspired you to pursue this?
Yeah, so I mentioned before my kind of had a rough time at Ole Miss, and a big part of that when I was there it was some mental health issues and having to deal with some depression and that kind of thing, and coming out of Ole Miss and kind of having and it's funny, my mental health definitely it goes along the path of my playing time, actually. So started turning around mentally and started playing more and started starting and really turned things around on the field as well. And I said, well, there's a connection here. I wonder if there's something I could do. And you know me, I came home, worked for my high school for a while, and just trying to figure out where I fit in the world and what I wanted to do and really who I wanted to be. And that was the biggest question for sure. Is I think this is a Shane Claiborne quote, but he basically, everyone that age is all worried about what do you want to do, and what we need to be asking ourselves is who we want to be at that age. And start realizing, I came into my college career with dreams of being an engineer, a problem solver, and then I realized, I still want to solve problems, and I still want to be a part of that process. And then it started becoming personal a little bit, and into learning about mental health and learning about what I was going through and what other people might be going through. And then I saw a niche there, and discovered after I guess I needed it, discovered sports psychology, and discovered that there's a world out there where you can work in the mental health field, but also work with athletes and work with people who might be going through what I once went through. So that was my opening into that world. And right now I'm working, about to finish my master's in athletic counseling. So kind of I guess a different way of saying sports psychology. And then basically trying to figure out what this next step will be. That's what this week and next week especially will be consisting of, for sure.
Yeah, I'm I don't know if you've seen this. I've watched I haven't watched the whole thing yet. But the documentary about Aaron Hernandez, have you seen that?
I've seen parts of it. I've definitely. That's a hot button issue these days, especially up here in Connecticut.
Well, it just got me thinking about how he was somebody who would have probably benefited from doing counseling.
Yes, for sure.
And from having a sports psychologist, just had a number of issues, mental health issues, family issues, unresolved issues. And so I guess it just got me thinking about you and how that's something that you've thought about in connecting sports and psychology. And so I just didn't know if you'd seen it or not, but yeah.
No, I saw it. I saw a few episodes, and what's interesting is I actually had a long conversation. I met with a gentleman up here who We just kind of started talking to each other, and he actually grew up with Aaron Hernandez, and I feel like I got pretty much a documentary of him out of that, what turned into maybe a 3-hour conversation with this guy.
Wow.
But, he grew up with him and everything, and walking away from just that conversation, I know mental health would have obviously, benefited him quite a bit. But I think the question that maybe Netflix, from what I hear, they answered slightly, but maybe kind of protected some of their interests, and is the CTE piece, working on the brain and seeing just how messed up his brain was, and I think that's playing a much bigger part in his story.
So when you say CTE, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a oh my goodness, I'm really gonna forget what it stands for right now, but it's basically, you know what, that is worth. I'm gonna Google that right now. It's oh my goodness, CTE. Let's see here. So chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Yep, that was rough. But yeah, it's a disease. Here I am trying to study neuroscience and stuff, but
no. Hey, they don't make the words easy.
They don't make them easy, man. But yeah, it's a neurological disease that they're discovering a protein that's, I guess, being activated in players' brains, not only through big concussions, but through repetitive hits for
Oh wow!
for the offensive lineman for sure. And the more I read about that, the more I realize, I'm calculating probably 100 hits of practice. Those things.
Wow! Yeah.
So it's definitely near and dear to me when it comes to that subject specifically. Maybe one day I'll learn how to pronounce it, and and then I can start actually studying.
Yeah. Well, no, but you've experienced some concussions too, haven't you?
I have,
through your career.
Yeah, one big one for sure. That was right before my freshman season started. And like I said before, it kind of had a bit of momentum at that point in time. So I probably came back way too soon, and that's not on the staff or anything. That's not on anyone at all. That was on me specifically. Seeing an opportunity that I had, and when my teammate left the team, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to get over this because here's my shot right now. Here's my window to really get in there. So that was my dumb fault for sure.
Well, and even since you played, I feel like there's been a lot more education and advances in how we understand concussions, even since you played.
Yeah. And precautions as well.
Precautions, yeah.
Football's got to survive. I mean, I'd be heartbroken if it really, the NFL fell apart one day. And there's obviously that's a long time from now, but youth involvement in football is obviously dropped. A lot of parents that aren't wanting their kids to go into it. So the game's got to change a little bit, and it has somewhat. We're still seeing some really rough injuries out there when it comes to head injuries, but the game's got to change a little bit. And I'm all for that to an extent, but I think we definitely benefit if a little more of that science came around. And I actually right now I alluded to the next step here. I can either go the route of being a certified or a licensed psychologist or a licensed counselor. The counselor would be a master's level. Really had to take only probably 2 more classes there to get that, but also another year of work basically. Or I could go into a doc program, and so I've been interviewing for a couple doctoral programs, and that's essentially been my area of they don't ask you to explicitly, write a contract in blood on what your research would be around, but they do ask you what area you would like to focus on and maybe something you want to address. And because it's so near and dear, traumatic brain injury, specifically when it comes to linked to depression and personality, those are kind of the two. Some research that I'd like to do around that, maybe a future dissertation or something. But so that's kind of been my point of emphasis when it comes to research, for sure.
Yeah. And so what role do you kind of see yourself, would you like to see psychology play in sports, maybe in the future?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, I ask myself every day this, would 18 to 22-year-old Jared have seen a psychologist, or would he have seen a counselor? And ultimately, the answer is no. And I think the field's rapidly, the stigma has rapidly changed since then. Quite a bit to maybe, there's been some professional athletes come out and talk about their struggles in mental health, but there certainly has been a stigma, especially around a sport like football, where you're supposed to be macho and all that. So and unfortunately, there's been a few victims to that. The Helinski, Tyler Helinski, obviously committed suicide, and then there's a number of other victims to that are prime examples of why this is a need. But really, I mean, the more I get for my role specifically, there's obviously there's two sides to sports psychology. There's the mental performance, and there's the you're essentially giving an athlete the tools to deal with arousal, deal with different elements of the game, anxiety, because they're exercising their bodies every day. They're trying to get better than their opponent physically. Our hope is that maybe there's a world where I think back in the 70s or something, there was no strength and conditioning. That wasn't a major part of what a football team would go through. Now there's entire staffs devoted to that. There's entire buildings devoted to that. My hope, obviously, there's not a need for an entire building devoted to mental health, but my hope is that it becomes a big role in that way. So that's one half of it. And then the other half is something I essentially have been exploring more and more, is this more holistic side of mental health and addressing the person. And, you're not going to be able to, Jared at 20 was exhibiting 8 to 9 qualifying symptoms of major depressive disorder. Like, he's not going to perform, and he didn't perform to his highest ability, for sure. And that showed. So, being able to work with, those types of athletes, and athletes who are maybe dealing with some trauma or something off the field specifically, and addressing that before you can even address the mental edge aspect of sports psychology. Both sides are incredibly fun, but I think one's a little more important than the other. So this next step is essentially, me dedicating myself to being a more holistic clinician there, and trying to be able to work with things like trauma and grief and depression, anxiety, some of those maybe more crippling pathologies.
Yeah. You touched on something that I think is really interesting, and something that I've seen a lot in the church, this kind of stigma of depression and anxiety and mental health, and how oftentimes what I hear is people say, something to the effect of, you're depressed because you have a lack of faith,
Mm.
or you're struggling with anxiety because you don't trust God.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people make that mistake of thinking that that anxiety and depression means you don't have faith in God, when really that's not the case at all.
Yeah, and we try to treat it that way, and that's a real shame, I think. And there's certainly space for spirituality in mental health. There's absolutely a space for that, and I would definitely argue that that's an important part. But when it comes down to it, there is this scientific part of it. These are chemicals interacting. This is trauma. This is something, this is a crippling injury that you can't see. And, and it's not fair to address it that way. It really isn't, because, in fact, it leads to more harm, if anything.
Absolutely.
You can't dwell on that specific side of it when you're not addressing the other side, and you're not addressing those issues. And that's something obviously psychology as a field is a pretty non-religious thing. It's not something that comes up a lot, unless you're talking about cultural competence.
Right.
But I think it's something, in personal conversations, that it's something that definitely be to account for sure. Especially in terms of some of the, I guess, more crippling pathologies, such as, like a schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder. One of those, in terms of spiritual warfare, there's a side that we're not acknowledging in the mental health field as well. And I think that's a shame as well. So,
yeah.
I think there should be a marriage of those two concepts. And it is a shame that both sides are maybe ignoring pivotal parts of those concepts.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the things that you have studied that have kind of maybe enlightened the way you think about things, or challenged the way you think about things, or maybe just things that you have found really interesting that you've been studying during your time here at in school?
Yeah, I think ultimately, there was me and one of my colleagues here. We talk about when you're coming in as a newbie, when it comes to this type of work, you kind of hang on semester by semester, and that semester can entirely change the way you're looking at a situation. So, which is obviously the plan, right? You're supposed to be changed by something like this degree. I brought this up to Jess recently. I heard a statistic about I think if 60% of married students that go into a doctoral program in counseling will leave the program single. And
wow,
so there's this
60%,
and I think that
wow,
I think the number is pretty high for masters as well. And so there's this element of change, and you have to be changed by some of this stuff, and you're facing so many realities, and so many different people are coming across your path, and you're seeing some really extremes, a lot of extremes in people, and so you have to be changed by that. So there, but at the same time, theoretically, and really the way you kind of attack mental health, there's a bit of, we call it the flavor of the week, kind of. So there's there's and essentially you're gonna hear something and be like, oh, that's the way I think from now on. So that happens pretty much every semester.
Right. Anytime I go to like a continuing education event, I'm like, this changed my life. I'm going to do all, and then I never, a flavor of the week. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, basically, just a flavor of the week here, and what's the flavor of the week now? Well, we're into this now. So, but I think I've been really more so deeply changed by the role that trauma plays in everyone's life, basically, and whether it's big T trauma or little T trauma, how powerful those experiences are, and how actually, especially when it comes to personality disorders, how those can affect different personality disorders, and obviously the PTSD, and then dissociative disorder, identity disorder. Those are all essentially mechanisms that people create to deal with their trauma. So we're working with a brain that's trying to heal itself. And one of the first things that I learned when I got into the program is a lot of the problems that you're going to see are people dealing with their own problems. So when you take alcoholism, someone who's alcoholic and deals with that, they're trying to medicate themselves in a way. They're trying to fix something about themselves, and sometimes that's trauma, and sometimes that's there was a trauma way back. They may be aware of it, they may not be aware of it, but there's something that person went through, and they're seeing you because they've abused alcohol. Well, their abuse of alcohol might be because of something that you need to address. So
I've often heard people say things like, alcohol is not their problem, it's their solution.
Yes, exactly.
It's their response to whatever trauma or whatever may have happened to kind of cause them to go that way.
Absolutely. So if you take it, he's a sports psychologist who I think he is the head of mental health for the NBA Players Association. So he's kind of spearheading mental health in the NBA kind of way. He came and spoke to us, and he said something really, really cool. He was talking about working with a lady who had gained a ton of weight, and she was, really overweight, and obviously it's affected her life negatively, that weight. And they met together, and soon enough it had come out that she had been sexually assaulted, and he went about reframing that, and her constant question is, why I come in and I try to lose weight, and I'm unsuccessful every time. I'm so unsuccessful at this. Why can't I successfully diet? And he said, well, technically, you are being successful. Your body is successfully putting weight on itself. And the question is why? Well, perhaps her body, perhaps her subconscious is protecting her from another sexual aggressor. And if I look like this, if I gain this amount of weight and I look like this, then maybe I'm less attractive to someone. So, and that might be a little simplistically put, but at the same time, that's kind of a powerful thing, is realizing, I am being successful at something, and I'm successfully counteracting this thing. So, kind
of what's going on? What's the real issue?
Yeah.
We think we know the issue, but what are we really addressing?
Exactly.
I think we can do that even on a small scale too, just in our daily lives.
Yeah.
As a way to kind of respond to things. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's a clinician's job to try to seek the root of that, and where why they get paid, and I say they because I'm certainly not there yet. But why they get paid the big bucks? They don't get paid the big bucks. Let's be honest. But why they get paid any money at all is having to navigate trauma and those kind of concepts in a way that doesn't traumatize someone, and so it's a tough job for sure. It's the only job in medicine that you can't just see someone's, not medicine, but health, I guess, is that you can't just see the ailment, and you can't see like specifically. You really gotta. There's a whole neuropsychology that we're just beginning to understand. So there's plenty of challenges there, but certainly, I mean, trauma is just the one concept that I've absolutely kind of hung on to, and would love to maybe put myself in a position to be able to help folks that might be dealing with that.
Well, I know you'll do well in that. I think that's something that suits you really well. I've known you for a long time, and that really seems to be right up your alley. So I know that you'll be successful in that. I know you will. So as we kind of wrap things up, I thought I'd end with a pretty big question. It's a pretty broad question. Right. What is one thing you wish people could know about mental health? Just one thing.
Mental health. Well, it's kind of like I think there's a religious saying like, Satan's best trick is making you think that you're alone, and making you think that you're the only one who has this sin, this specific sin that's getting you off track. And I would say kind of the same thing around mental health is you're not alone. There's a lot of us that don't talk about that, and there's a lot of big bad football players who are dealing with some crippling anxiety or depression or something along those lines, and really just know. I mean, whatever you're going through, you're not the first, and there's certainly a lot of people and resources out there that are absolutely waiting with open arms to help you. In some cases, there is a shortage of those people, but we're working really hard to make that more of an accessible thing, and just try to reach out and try to get that kind of help, and just know you're not alone. I mean, everyone has a moment where they're dealing with something along those lines, and obviously there's certain certain grades of that, and certain different extents that people go through those things, but really just understanding it, it's not just you. Everyone has something, and we need each other. We need to reach out and be able to talk about those things. And if it's a friend, if it's a clinician, if it's a pastor, whatever you can do, try to get that help.
Yeah, thank you so much for that wisdom of just remembering that we're not alone, and there are other people in this world that are dealing with the same things that we are, and how we can reach out and be there for one another. So, Jared, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Just really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I know you've got a couple different guests lined up, and I'm really excited to see it. We've always talked about doing a podcast, and you're actually doing it now, so congrats.
I know. Yeah, hopefully. At first I thought, oh, what if nobody listens? And now I'm thinking, oh no, what if people actually do listen? So it's kind of a weird. No, you could diagnose me about that.
But that makes sense. No, I think that's perfectly natural and everything. So, man, I hope it takes off.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, so that was my interview with Jared Duke, and I hope that you enjoyed that. At this time, we're going to transition into that meditation that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. Just going to provide some quick context. This is a project that Jared did for students who have done some research and who have worked some in counseling, and so I hope that you can find ways for this to maybe have an impact in your own life, and maybe you'll be able to use it. And so I hope you enjoy it.
Now it's time for a mental cool down. Stand in the ready position, with your knees bent slightly and your feet shoulders width apart. Now close your eyes and take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Now breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. Resume breathing normally. With your eyes still closed, what are your thoughts and feelings about what had happened today? Now think about your performance today and get a clear picture in your mind of what you did well. It could have been the physical or mental aspect of your performance. For example, your preparation, your effort, or your technique. Now recall what it felt like for you to do that well. And with each breath you take, you are filled with the confidence that you can repeat what you did well in the future. Okay. Now let the picture in your mind of what you did well fade, and breathe in slowly through your nose and out through your mouth. Picture what you could have done better today. What exactly is it that you could do better next time? Now, with that clear image in your mind of what you could do better, think about how you can go about doing it better. Whom do you need to ask for help? What you need to do mentally or physically, for example, your preparation, your effort, or your technique. As a picture of what you need to do emerges in your mind, you feel a spark of energy deep inside. As you shake out your arms, feel the energy spread throughout your body. You can use this energy to power your efforts to achieve your goals. Now you have the level of energy you need. You know what you want to accomplish. You believe you can accomplish it, and you are ready to do it. On the count of 3, clap your hands 3 times and go on your way, positive and ready to make it happen. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Methodical Methodist Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, I hope you might consider heading on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review of the show. It is very much appreciated. And until next time, stay methodical.